Captain James Walker stood on the observation deck of the Earth vessel Horizon, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness of space. The ship had been sent to explore the Orion Arm, a mission that had already lasted 3 years. His crew of 30 specialized scientists and military personnel had documented 17 uninhabited planets, but they had yet to encounter intelligent life. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual energy signature," said Officer Marcus from the communication station. His voice carried a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Walker moved quickly to the main bridge. "Show me." The holographic display revealed a massive object approaching their position. It wasn't natural. The perfectly symmetrical design suggested artificial construction. The object slowed as it neared the horizon, eventually stopping at a distance that felt deliberate, not too close to be threatening, but close enough for clear communication. "It's scanning us," said Officer Taylor, the ship's security expert. Her hand hovered near the weapons controls. "Hold position. Do not engage defensive systems," ordered Walker. "Let's not start humanity's first alien contact with hostility." The scanning beam swept through the ship for several minutes before disappearing. Then silence. The crew waited, barely breathing. A voice suddenly filled the bridge, speaking perfect English. "Greetings, humans of Earth vessel Horizon. We are the Voidians. We have observed your species from afar for many years. Your journey beyond your solar system demonstrates you are ready for formal introduction to the galactic community." Walker exchanged glances with Dr. Elizabeth Reed, the ship's diplomatic specialist. She nodded encouragingly. "This is Captain James Walker of Earth. We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization." The alien vessel released smaller craft that approached the horizon. Through the viewports, the crew got their first glimpse of the Voidians. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with their movements. "We invite representatives to visit our ship. We wish to discuss your joining the Galactic Accord," the voice continued. After careful consideration and several security protocols, Walker and Reed boarded the alien shuttle. The interior of the Voidian vessel stunned them. It was a bustling hub of activity with not just Voidians, but at least 7 visibly different species moving about in harmony. They were brought before a council of 12 beings, each representing different civilizations. The lead Voidian, who introduced himself as Elder Toll, explained the nature of the Galactic Accord. "For 20,000 years, our coalition has maintained peace across 3 galactic arms. We share knowledge, resources, and protection. We have watched Earth for centuries. Your species shows remarkable adaptability and potential." Reed leaned forward. "If you've been watching us, you know our history isn't entirely peaceful." Elder Toll's skin shifted to a deeper blue. "No species begins perfectly. What matters is growth. The Accord believes humanity is ready for inclusion." Walker felt the weight of this moment. He was standing in for all of Earth's history, all its future. What would joining entail? Knowledge exchange, trade routes, protection from hostile forces beyond the Accord's borders, and eventually, full integration into our shared governance, answered another council member, a being with 4 arms and crystalline features. Over the next several days, Walker and Reed learned about technologies beyond human imagination, medical advancements that could eliminate diseases, and energy systems that could revolutionize Earth's infrastructure. Upon returning to the horizon, Walker sent the information back to Earth. The response was swift. A delegation of Earth's leaders would arrive within months for formal induction. As the horizon prepared to escort the Voidian representatives to Earth, Walker couldn't shake a strange feeling. The Accord members seemed particularly interested in human military history, asking questions about tactics, training, and conflict resolution that seemed oddly specific. "They're peaceful, but they're very curious about how we fight," Walker mentioned to Reed as they reviewed the meeting notes. Reed nodded slowly. "Perhaps peace is precisely why they're interested. You don't maintain harmony across galaxies without understanding conflict." Neither realized just how prophetic those words would prove to be. 6 months after Earth's official induction into the Galactic Accord, Commander Thomas Grant found himself leading the human contingent aboard the Accord peacekeeping vessel Harmony. The massive ship housed representatives from 12 species, all trained in diplomatic resolution and, when necessary, defensive operations. Grant stood out among the alien peacekeepers. While they moved with careful precision, he carried himself with the confident posture of someone who had seen real combat during Earth's last regional conflict. The other species noticed this difference but said nothing until the distress call came from Outpost Vega. Border dispute between the Lumerians and Tachyians has escalated to armed conflict, announced Fleet Coordinator Nix, a tall, amphibious being who served as the mission commander. Outpost Vega reports weapons fire. We are the closest response team. As the Harmony changed course toward the disputed sector, Grant studied the briefing materials. The conflict stemmed from overlapping claims to a mineral-rich asteroid belt. Both species had previously been peaceful members of the Accord for centuries. Standard protocol is to establish a neutral zone and begin mediation, explained Nix to the response team. We will deploy in 3 groups: communication, barrier establishment, and evacuation of civilians. Grant raised his hand. What about defensive measures if we're fired upon? Several alien team members shifted uncomfortably. Nix's gills fluttered briefly before responding. Accord peacekeepers focus on de-escalation, Commander. Defense is secondary. When they arrived at Outpost Vega, the situation had deteriorated beyond the reports. The station was taking heavy fire from both sides, its shields failing. Hundreds of civilian researchers and their families were trapped inside. Proceed with protocol, ordered Nix, sending teams to establish communication with both warring factions. Grant watched the tactical display with growing concern. Sir, they're not responding to hails. The station shields will fail in approximately 14 minutes. Continue attempts at communication, insisted Nix. After 10 more minutes of failed diplomacy, Grant made a decision. He gathered his human team of 6 officers. We're going to implement Emergency Protocol Delta, he told them quietly. Prepare the shield extension modules and load the flash disruptors. Without waiting for Accord authorization, Grant's team launched toward the station in small, fast shuttles. They deployed portable shield generators at strategic points around the failing station shield, creating a temporary reinforcement. Then, using Earth's recently developed flash disruptors, non-lethal weapons that overloaded sensory systems, they targeted the weapons systems of both attacking forces. The effect was immediate. The attacking ship's targeting systems failed, their crews temporarily disoriented. In the confusion, Grant's team established an energy barrier between the warring parties using technology that the human contingent had been developing in secret, a modified version of Earth's electromagnetic pulse generators, adapted with Accord technology. By the time Nix and the official response team arrived at the station, Grant had already begun evacuation of civilians and opened communication channels with both sides, who, now unable to continue fighting effectively, were suddenly more open to discussion. The station and its people were saved, but the mood on the Harmony was tense when they returned. Grant was immediately summoned to a council of Accord representatives. Your actions, while effective, violated multiple Accord protocols, stated Nix, whose normal blue coloration had darkened to almost black. You were not authorized to engage directly or to deploy weapons of any kind. With respect, replied Grant, standing tall before the council, the protocols would have failed. The station would have been destroyed along with 300 innocent lives. An elder Voidian named Mur stepped forward. What concerns us, Commander, is not that you acted, but how you acted. Your team moved with precision that suggests extensive training in combat situations. The efficiency with which you neutralized both forces was disturbing. Grant noticed the other council members studying him with new eyes, not with gratitude, but with something that looked almost like fear. I did what was necessary to save lives, Grant said simply. Yes, replied Mur. That is precisely what troubles us. Dr. Krell moved silently through the vast archives of the Accord Library, his four arms working independently to manipulate the holographic displays. As the Accord's most respected xenopsychologist, he had been tasked with understanding humanity's approach to conflict following Commander Grant's concerning actions at Outpost Vega. Display Earth's military history, Krell instructed the system. The room filled with floating images, videos, and text, all collected from Earth's open networks, history books, and military archives, shared during the knowledge exchange that accompanied Earth's admission to the Accord. What began as an academic exercise quickly turned into something more disturbing. Krell's species, the Neheran, were empathic by nature. As he absorbed the information about Earth's wars, he physically felt the echoes of pain, determination, and horror contained in the records. Computer, verified as information, Krell said after reviewing accounts of Earth's two global conflicts. These casualty numbers cannot be accurate. Data verified, responded the emotionless system. World War II resulted in approximately 75 million deaths over 6 Earth years. Krell's skin paled to a sickly white. The Accord's worst conflict in its 20,000-year history had resulted in fewer than 10,000 deaths and was considered an unthinkable tragedy that led to major reforms. Day after day, Krell continued his research. He documented humanity's evolution from simple tribal conflicts to sophisticated modern warfare. He analyzed their weapons development, tactical innovations, and military philosophies. Most troubling were not the weapons themselves, but humanity's capacity to adapt, to find new ways to overcome obstacles in combat situations. After 3 weeks of study, Krell presented his findings to the Accord High Council. Representatives from 27 species gathered in the Grand Chamber, their expressions growing more concerned as Krell displayed his research. Humans have fought more wars in their brief 10,000-year civilization than the combined conflicts of all Accord species, Krell explained. They have turned warfare into an art form, a science, and a philosophy. He showed them footage from Earth's military training exercises, soldiers running toward danger instead of away from it, deliberately putting themselves in harsh conditions to build resilience, practicing combat scenarios endlessly. Unlike most spacefaring species who evolved beyond violent conflict before achieving interstellar travel, humans developed space technology while still engaging in regional wars, Krell continued. They never had the peaceful transition period most species experience. Elder Toll, who had initially advocated for humanity's inclusion in the Accord, spoke up. But their recent history shows decreased global conflict. They seem to be evolving past warfare. With respect, Elder, Krell responded, they haven't evolved past warfare. They've simply gotten better at avoiding it when possible. Their military capabilities continue to advance even in peacetime. Their fiction, entertainment, and games frequently center around conflict scenarios. Krell displayed one final piece of evidence, a comparison chart showing how various species responded to threat scenarios. Most Accord species evolved to respond to threats with avoidance behaviors or defensive posturing. Humans, however, developed what they call aggressive problem-solving. They moved toward threats to neutralize them, often preemptively. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "Are you suggesting we revoke Earth's membership?" asked a representative from the Gathis species. "No," Krell said carefully. "Humans possess many admirable qualities: creativity, determination, compassion. But their approach to conflict is fundamentally different from ours. Commander Grant's actions at Outpost Vega weren't an anomaly. They were perfectly aligned with human military doctrine. Assess, decide, act, with emphasis on decisive force applied precisely." "What do you recommend?" Elder Toll asked. "We need to understand them better before we integrate them further into Accord operations," Krell replied. "I propose a controlled test, a situation where we can observe their approach to conflict resolution in a real scenario, but with safeguards in place." The council members exchanged troubled glances, Testing sentient beings felt unethical, yet the alternative, allowing an unpredictable species full access to Accord operations, seemed potentially catastrophic. "Very well," Elder Toll finally said. "Design your test, Dr. Krell. But remember, these humans are now our allies. We must treat them with respect, even as we seek to understand them." Krell nodded, though his skin remained pale. "The test will reveal whether humans represent the Accord's greatest asset or its greatest threat." The Meridian cluster blazed on the main display of the Accord Emergency Council chamber. 7 worlds, once peaceful members of the Accord, had fallen to a separatist movement calling themselves the Free Meridian Alliance. Their leader, a charismatic Keldarian named Jorax, had united discontented groups across multiple worlds with promises of freedom from Accord interference. "The situation deteriorates daily," reported Security Director Vex, his crystalline form glinting under the chamber lights. 3 more outposts fell yesterday. They've adapted to our standard peacekeeping measures." Elder Toll looked around the chamber at the worried faces of the council. "The simulations predict a 3-year conflict with current approaches." Dr. Krell stood quietly in the corner, observing. When Elder Toll nodded to him, he stepped forward. "There is another option," Krell said. "The humans have a specialized military unit designed for exactly this type of scenario. They call it the Rapid Response Task Force, led by Colonel Anna Davis." Murmurs filled the chamber. Most council members had read Krell's disturbing report on human warfare. "You propose we unleash humans on this problem?" asked a Gathis representative incredulously. "After your own warnings." "A controlled deployment," Krell clarified. "Limited personnel, clear objectives, and Accord observers at all times." After hours of debate, desperation won over caution. The council voted to approve what they officially termed the Meridian Intervention Test. Colonel Anna Davis arrived the next day with a team of just 15 specialists. She stood before the council, her posture perfect, her expression revealing nothing as she reviewed the briefing materials. "You've been trying standard peacekeeping protocols," she noted. "Visible presence, defensive positions, reactive measures only. Those are Accord principles," confirmed Vex. Davis nodded. "With respect, those principles work when both sides want peace. The Free Meridian Alliance wants victory. We need to change the equation." Her plan shocked the council. Instead of defending remaining outposts, Davis proposed targeted operations to disrupt the Separatists' command structure, supply lines, and communications. She requested access to intelligence networks, transportation, and minimal weaponry, mostly non-lethal, but some exceptions, just in case. "This is not how the Accord handles internal conflicts," objected one council member. "Then perhaps that's why this conflict persists," Davis replied calmly. With reluctance, the council approved her plan. Krell volunteered to accompany the human team as an observer. What followed was unlike anything the Accord had witnessed in centuries. Davis's team moved like shadows through the Meridian systems. They never attacked civilian targets, but Separatist leaders would wake to find their security bypassed, their plans compromised, their supplies mysteriously redirected or rendered useless. When direct conflict was unavoidable, the humans fought with controlled precision. Krell watched in fascination and horror as they neutralized enemy forces 3 times their size through what Davis called force multipliers, superior tactics, terrain exploitation, and psychological operations. "We don't want to kill them," Davis explained to Krell after one operation. "We just need to break their will to fight." The separatist movement began to fracture within weeks. By the 2nd month, defections were common. By the 3rd month, Jorax himself was captured, not in a violent confrontation, but through an elaborate deception that left him voluntarily walking into a human trap. The council had expected a years-long conflict. Davis's team resolved it in 12 weeks. Yet the victory celebration was subdued. The council members watched the humans with new eyes, seeing not just allies, but something their peaceful coalition had never needed before: warriors. You achieved your objectives admirably, Elder Toll told Davis during the formal debriefing. Thank you, Elder. My team just applied standard counterinsurgency doctrine, Davis replied. Nothing special. That was precisely what troubled the Council most. What Davis considered nothing special had resolved in weeks what the Accord's best minds predicted would take years. As Davis and her team prepared to return to Earth, Krell completed his confidential assessment for the Council. His conclusion was simple. Humans don't just study warfare. They understand it at a level that suggests it is fundamental to their nature. This makes them both invaluable and dangerous to the Accord's future. The emergency alarms echoed through the Accord's central hub, a sound not heard in over 500 years. Elder Toll rushed to the Council chamber, his normally graceful movements hurried and tense. The room was already filled with representatives from across the Accord, their faces showing varying degrees of fear. Report, Toll commanded as he took his seat. Security Director Vex activated the main display. Unknown vessels appeared at the edge of Sector 7 3 hours ago. They've already destroyed 2 outposts and disabled the defensive systems on Keldar Prime. They call themselves the Harvesters. The display showed massive ships, unlike any known design. Black and angular, they moved with surprising speed for their size. Our diplomatic channels? Asked Toll. Ignored, replied Vex. They responded only once, stating, "Your resources are now ours. Resistance will be noted and punished accordingly." The Accord fleet? Asked another council member. Engaging, but Vex's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Our weapons seem ineffective against their shielding. 3 Accord battleships have been lost with all hands. The council chamber erupted in voices. The Accord had maintained peace for so long that true warfare was beyond living memory for most species. Their defensive fleet was designed for peacekeeping, not full-scale conflict. Dr. Krell spoke up from his position near the wall. There is one option we haven't considered. The room fell silent as everyone realized what he was suggesting. No, said one council member firmly. We cannot unleash the humans on an unknown species. After what we saw with the Meridian Crisis. Krell interrupted. We know they can resolve conflicts efficiently. There's a difference between handling separatists and facing an invasion force, argued another member. The debate might have continued for hours if not for the sudden darkness that engulfed the room. The main power to the hub had been cut. When emergency systems activated, Vex's voice was grim. The Harvesters have breached our outer defenses. They'll reach Central Hub in less than 2 days. Elder Toll closed his eyes briefly, then made the decision. Contact Earth. Request immediate military assistance. Full authorization. Within hours, the first human ships arrived. Sleek, heavily armed vessels that looked nothing like the exploration and diplomatic craft the Accord had seen before. Earth had kept these ships secret, a fact that would disturb the Council in peaceful times. Now, it brought only relief. General Michael Ross, commander of Earth's United Defense Force, established a command center in the hub. His team worked with incredible speed, analyzing harvester technology, adapting weapons, and developing countermeasures. The Harvesters use a crystalline-based shield technology, Ross explained to the Council. We've modified our phase cannons to match their resonance frequency. We'll disable their shields, then target propulsion systems. You mean to destroy them? Asked a council member. Not unless necessary, Ross replied. But we will stop them. The human fleet engaged the Harvesters near the Caldarian asteroid belt. The Council watched in stunned silence as humans employed tactics no Accord species would have conceived, using the asteroid field for cover, creating deliberate system overloads to draw Harvester attention, and coordinating attacks with a precision that seemed almost prescient. When Harvester ground forces landed on Ilara, a garden world on the edge of Accord space, human Marines deployed in response. Unlike the Accord peacekeepers who had been overwhelmed, the humans fought with a controlled ferocity that shocked even the Harvesters. They adapted to enemy tactics in real time, used the terrain to their advantage, and demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice themselves to protect civilians that left the watching Accord representatives both grateful and disturbed. "They fight as if born to it," whispered an aide to Elder Toll as they watched footage of a human squad holding a narrow pass against overwhelming odds, buying time for an evacuation. "Perhaps they were," Toll replied quietly. Within 2 months, the Harvester threat was neutralized. Their remaining ships retreated beyond known space after suffering losses they clearly hadn't anticipated. The Accord had survived, thanks entirely to human intervention. As the Council gathered to formally thank General Ross and his forces, the mood was complex. Gratitude mixed with a new emotion many Council members had never experienced before: fear of their own allies. The Grand Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every Accord world crowded the tiered seating, their voices creating a constant murmur that echoed through the vast space. At the center table sat the High Council, with Elder Toll looking more tired than anyone had ever seen him. "This emergency session will come to order," Toll announced, his voice cutting through the noise. "We gather to discuss the human question." Silence fell immediately. 3 months had passed since the defeat of the Harvesters. 3 months of uneasy peace as the Accord worlds tried to process what they had witnessed. "We have compiled complete records of human military actions during a Harvester conflict," said Security Director Vex. "All Council members have received these files. Before we begin the debate, we will view key moments for context." The room darkened as the central holographic display activated. It showed footage from various battles, humans fighting with a combination of technology, strategy, and something else that had no name in any Accord language. A human officer diving on an explosive device to save alien civilians. A human pilot deliberately drawing enemy fire to create an opening for others. A human medic treating wounded Harvesters with the same care as Accord species. But there were other moments too. A human squad executing a precision strike that eliminated an entire Harvester command center in less than 3 minutes. Human strategists calmly discussing casualty projections as if the numbers were merely data points. A human sniper waiting 14 hours without moving, then taking a shot that changed the course of a ground battle. When the display finally darkened, the room remained silent for several moments. Ambassador Rel of the Gathis was the first to speak. "We cannot ignore the obvious. Without humans, the Accord would have fallen to the Harvesters. They saved countless lives." "At what cost?" countered Delegate Zinn, his feathered crest rising with emotion. "I've reviewed their battle plans. They calculated acceptable losses. They have doctrines for every form of warfare imaginable. These aren't peacekeepers who learn to fight. They're warriors who choose peace when convenient." The debate raged for hours. Some Council members pushed for increased human integration into Accord defense forces. Others demanded strict limitations on human military presence in Accord space. Dr. Krell eventually approached the speaking platform. "I have studied humans more closely than anyone in this chamber. What makes them different isn't their weapons or even their tactics. It's their mentality. Every human soldier can switch from perfect compassion to lethal efficiency in an instant. This cognitive flexibility is unique among known species. Is that not an advantage?" asked a Council member. "It is both their greatest strength and what makes them dangerous," Krell replied. "Humans don't just fight wars. They study them, prepare for them even in peacetime, and most importantly, they innovate during them. The Harvesters couldn't adapt to human tactics because humans kept changing them. No species in the Accord thinks this way." Elder Toll raised his hand for silence. "Let us hear from the humans themselves. General Ross and Captain Walker have requested to address the Council." The 2 humans entered the chamber, their uniforms pristine, their posture straight. Walker spoke first. "We understand your concerns. Earth's history is filled with conflict, and we've become very good at waging war. But we've also learned its cost. Every human soldier hopes never to use their training." General Ross stepped forward. "The Accord has maintained peace for millennia, an achievement Earth deeply respects. We don't want to bring war to the stars. But pretending conflict doesn't exist won't prevent it. The harvesters weren't interested in your peaceful ways. And if the next threat is worse, asked Walker, will you sacrifice Accord worlds because you fear your own allies? The council chamber erupted in voices again. Accusations, questions, and proposals flew across the room. Through it all, the humans stood calmly, waiting for the storm to pass. As the session extended into its 14th hour, a clear division emerged. The Accord needed human protection, but feared human methods. They wanted the shield without the sword, yet couldn't have one without the other. There must be a middle path, Elder Toll said finally, his voice weary but determined. Some way to incorporate human strength without fundamentally changing who we are as a coalition of peaceful species. All eyes turned to the humans, wondering if such a compromise was even possible. The Galactic Accord's final decision came after 3 days of intense debate. The central hub buzzed with activity as representatives from all member worlds gathered for the announcement. Elder Toll stood at the center of the Grand Chamber, flanked by the High Council members and the human delegation led by Captain Walker, Dr. Reed, and Colonel Davis. Today we establish a new protocol for the preservation of peace across our shared cosmos. Toll began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. The harvester crisis has taught us that threats exist which our traditional methods cannot address. Yet we must not abandon the principles that have guided us for 20,000 years. The chamber was completely silent as Toll continued. Therefore, by unanimous vote of the High Council, and with agreement from Earth's representatives, we hereby enact the Human Restriction Accord. Holograms appeared above the gathering, displaying the detailed agreement. Toll summarized the key points. Humans will be restricted from direct military engagement in all Accord conflicts except those classified as existential threats to the coalition itself. A council of both human and Accord representatives will determine when this threshold is met. Colonel Davis stood straighter, her expression neutral though her eyes revealed a deeper understanding of the decision. Additionally, we will establish a human advisory corps under Captain Walker and Dr. Reed's leadership. This group will work with Accord species to share knowledge while respecting our different approaches to conflict resolution. Walker nodded respectfully, catching Reed's eye. They had fought hard for this compromise during private negotiations. Finally, Colonel Davis will lead a specialized human defense initiative that will remain in reserve, training continuously but deploying only when all peaceful options have failed. The room remained silent as the implications settled in. It wasn't a punishment. It was recognition of something the humans themselves had understood for centuries. Their capacity for warfare was both their greatest strength and most troubling trait. After the formal ceremony, Walker found himself on an observation deck overlooking the swirling nebula that housed the central hub. Elder Toll joined him, moving slowly with age. "You understand why this was necessary," Toll said. It wasn't a question. "We do," Walker replied. "We've spent our history trying to contain our own capacity for violence. We would not wish to bring our wars to the stars. Yet you trained for them anyway." Walker smiled slightly. Hoping for peace while preparing for war is perhaps the most human thing about us. Across the hub, Colonel Davis was showing a group of younger Accord species the medal she had received for her service during a harvester conflict. One of them, a small Voidian barely into adulthood, asked the question that many thought but few voiced. "Aren't you angry? Being told you can't fight unless they decide it's bad enough?" Davis considered this carefully. "No, we didn't join the Accord to fight its wars. We joined to be part of something larger than ourselves." She looked at the medal in her hand. "Besides, the restriction isn't really about limiting us. It's about understanding what we are." In the diplomatic wing, Dr. Reed was already establishing the framework for the advisory corps with Dr. Krell. "We'll need to carefully select which human military history to share," Krell noted. "Some concepts may be too disturbing." Reed shook her head. "If they're going to understand us, they need the full picture, our triumphs and our darkest moments. You can't appreciate why we need restrictions without understanding what happens when humans fight without them. As the various species departed for their homeworlds in the days that followed, a new understanding spread throughout the Accord. Humans were not banned from fighting because they were dangerous allies. They were restricted precisely because they were the most effective warriors the galaxy had ever seen. The Human Restriction Accord wasn't a punishment or a limitation. It was recognition of a simple truth that the cosmos had now learned. Some weapons are too powerful to use except in the darkest hour. And humanity, with its unique blend of compassion, innovation, and capacity for controlled violence, was the most powerful weapon of all.